welcome to One Man's Movies Films of the Year 2024. So it's been another terrific year at the movies. I've seen over 200 films during the year and spent over 15 and a half days of my life watching them. The quality has been such that putting this list together this year has been the hardest it has ever been. And I know I say that every year, but this year I really meant it. Even with 20 films in my top list this year, I'm gutted that I've had to leave out a whole swathe of great films. This even included some films, 7 of them, that I rated 4.5 or 5 stars. So before we start, honorary mentions go to Ian McKellen's Hamlet, The Fall Guy, Monster, The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, The Greatest Night in Pop, My Old Ass, and The Boys in the Boat, a film I even got a starring role in. Sorry, George. I've also specifically excluded any films which I saw at film festivals during 2024 unless they have already had their UK release. Even though there are some films that I've seen that I can already forecast are going to make my top 20 for 2025. You might also notice some films missing from my list that you might be expecting. For example, I was not a great fan of the Holocaust drama The Zone of Interest, which I know some critics loved. And although great films, you also won't find Anora, Emilia Perez or Heretic in my lists. So without further ado, here are the items in my 20 to number 11 slots, starting with number 20.
Are you having a good time?
I feel like we're forgetting, like, a lot of stuff.
There's something weird going on.
Something's making us forget. Where's Jess?
Who's Jess?
And at number 20, I have Blink Twice. This terrific little Me Too thriller, the directorial debut of Zoe Kravitz, was hugely entertaining, albeit at times somewhat uncomfortable watch. Naomi Ackie and Adria Arjona really shone in the lead roles, and Channing Tatum, as the sort of Jeffrey Epstein of the piece, gave his best performance in years. It's only not higher rated in my top 20 because I wasn't very convinced by the ending.
A ver, usted nos ve felices gracias a la puta mesita. ¿Usted cree que nos está aportando felicidad?
¿Tú estás por la mesita? ¿En serio? ¿Qué está pasando, eh?
At my number 19 slot, I have The Coffee Table. With Mary, Joseph and little baby in the film, this must surely be a Christmas film. Actually, very much not so. This unique comedy horror story by Spanish director Kay Casas takes you on a horror journey like no other, mercilessly breaking taboos along the way. How can there be a horror film about a coffee table, I hear you asking? Does it turn into some devil-worshipping beast that goes and attacks the family? No, of course not. It's a coffee table. But when the horror comes, it is truly shocking. Far darker than any other horror movie that I've seen this year. It really is a once-seen, never-forgotten sort of film.
I want you to be my coach. I want you to be my coach.
How often does this happen? Going after the same girl? Come here.
Which one of us?
At number 18, I have Challengers. I'm generally not a great fan of Luca Guadagnino's work, but this one grabbed my attention. Zendaya is really hot at the moment, in more ways than one, and potentially award-worthy in this. Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor also give fabulous performances, but it's the cinematography of the dynamic tennis matches that really makes this movie stand out for me. like nothing we've seen in tennis films before. Genuinely exciting stuff.
The arena turns slaves into gladiators, the gladiators into free men.
You have something in you. I knew it from the start.
Did you now?
Rage. That rage is your gift.
At number 17, I have Gladiator II. Ridley Scott's long-delayed sequel hasn't been everybody's cup of tea, but I really enjoyed it, including its space monkeys and the sharks, even though they didn't have Roman frickin' laser beams on their heads. I thought Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal were fine, but Denzel Washington was really spectacular in his role as the manipulative Macrinus, and will probably be my pick for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars.
My mom sent me away.
She did it to keep you safe.
Your son did not arrive at his destination. You're responsible for his safety. Why can't you tell me? Where's my boy?
And my number 16 is Blitz. It's probably the most non-Steve McQueen type of movie in his canon. But his take on wartime London contains some wonderful performances by Saoirse Ronan and a surprisingly good Paul Weller in his debut performance. It also has some truly memorable set pieces. A Fagin type of subplot with Stephen Graham and Kathy Burke feels a little bit misjudged, but the scene it introduces, an attack on the Café Paris, is just brilliantly done.
The thing you love most, it terrifies me. I can't imagine if something happens to you.
They're rooting against you, Trudy. They want the water to win.
I came all this way. Might as well see England.
And my number 15 is a Disney film, Young Woman and the Sea. I really wasn't expecting much from this, but both myself and the illustrious Mrs. Movie Man loved it. This is a film that the whole family can sit and enjoy together, and there are precious few of those around. It's based on a remarkable true story of one woman athlete's fight against the patriarchy in 1920s America. It stars Daisy Ridley, who is actually really very good in the lead role.
Tell me, where did she come from? I shall. For it is a happy tale.
I am Bella Baxter, and there is a world to enjoy, circumnavigate. It is the goal of all to progress, grow.
A woman plotting her course to freedom. How delightful.
And my number 14 is Poor Things. Yorgos Lanthimos has always pushed the boundaries of good taste in his movies, and with Poor Things, he continues that trend. This raucous, sexually explicit fairy tale is filmed with mind-blowing style and won Oscars for production design, hair, makeup and costume design. It also, of course, won Emma Stone the Best Actress Oscar for her brave performance. Brave always being the word used when an actress gets stark naked and leaves nothing to the imagination.
You don't tell a boy that's been left behind at Christmas that nobody wants him? What's wrong with you?
There's nobody here, okay? You stay out of my way, and I'll stay out of yours.
Let me sleep in the
Now, most of the kids dislike you, pretty much hate you. Teachers too. You know that, right?
Very much a Christmas film, Alexander Payne's The Holdovers was deliberately filmed in a retro 1970s style to the extent that it had an old school trailer and also an ancient 1970s BBFC AA certification card at the beginning. There's a standout performance in the film from Paul Giamatti playing the jaded classics professor Paul Hunnam, and of course it won Divine Joy Randolph an Oscar for her supporting role as the recently bereaved matron.
may gàddaay ñoo bëgg a dem tukki Europe li tax ma bëgg a dem li tax may gàddaay xaalis matugul jarul compter sunu gaay yi mbëkkoon daaw
ci tumaas nga nekk stade bu mag tubaab bu xonk cur bu xonkul doo ko signal bu xonk cur ngay signal autographe
yaay tey dama bëggoon ñu waxtaan gis nga fii ma nekk fi laa bëgg nga nekk fi ñu bokk li ñuy nooyi maa jëm.
And my number 12 is Io Capitano. Charting the desperate road trip of two poor Senegalese boys and their search for a better life in Europe, this Italian-made movie features an astonishingly proficient debut performance by young Sadhu Sarr. The gripping realistic action is interspersed with surreal dream sequences, a really pleasant surprise of a film.
Por favor, abróchense cinturones.
¿Sabemos dónde estamos?
Finally, just missing out on my top 10 is Society of the Snow. Nominated as Spain's entry in the international Oscar category, J.A. Bayona's film tells the traumatic true story of the Andes plane crash survivors. Before we get into the starvation and the cannibalistic horror, the film stages one of the best, i.e. most realistic, plane crashes ever put onto film. The scenery is also spectacular, with Spain's Sierra Nevada mountains standing in for the Andes.
Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay?
Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
At number 10, I've got Alex Garland's Civil War. This paints a horrifying picture of a dystopian America with a US president desperately clawing on to a third term in office against mounting public unrest. Yeah, as if that could ever happen. Kirsten Dunst plays the lead role of a photojournalist, with rising star Kaylee Spaney impressing as her enthusiastic protege. But it's the short cameo by Dunst's husband, Jesse Plemons, that really sticks in the mind. It wouldn't surprise me if this short appearance generated a Best Supporting Actor nomination.
If I made you the first woman ever to lead an overseas mission, the whole world would look to you as proof of what woman can or cannot accomplish.
If we are to build an empire of hope, my sisters, it seems we must first conquer New York.
At my number 9 slot, I have Cabrini. As with Young Woman and the Sea at my number 15 slot, this is another true story about an extraordinary woman facing up to the patriarchy of America's past. It tells the story of Mother Cabrini, who struggles to set up a mission for the homeless in a marvellously visualised 1889 New York. Made by Angel Studios, this slipped through cinemas pretty well unnoticed back in March, but it is now available to rent on streaming services, and you can get it on both Apple TV and Prime Video in the UK for just £1.99. Rent it, it's terrific.
This is the correct length. Uniforms to your knees.
It shall be my constant endeavor to abide by the rules of my school.
Be careful with boys. Don't talk to them more than necessary.
Are you jealous? No one interested me ever. Who's this?
And my number 8 slot is Girls Will Be Girls. This year has been a terrific year for female directors, bringing films to the screen with strong female characters. This is the case with Girls Will Be Girls. Coming of age and sexual awakening films have been done many times before, But Sushil Talati's film, set in a mixed boarding school high in the mountains of the northern Indian region of Uttarakhand, just does it to perfection. It features a brilliant central performance by the delightful Preeti Panigrahi in her feature debut. The sexual content is delicately done, but has the best masturbatory use of a stuffed toy since Ling Ling the panda in Booksmart.
What happened to her eye? That fell off way before anything happened between us.
But in addition, the film sizzles with sexual tension and unsaid things happening off screen, such that it really plays out like a bit of a thriller. It had a very limited release in UK cinemas, but you can now find it available to rent on streaming platforms, including Prime Video and Sky Store.
My family's been fighting them for centuries.
Your blood comes from dukes and great houses. Here, we're equal. What we do for the benefit of all.
Well, I'd very much like to be equal to you.
Maybe I'll show you the way.
From Girls Will Be Girls, an indie film with a tiny budget, my number 7 is a blockbuster with a $190 million budget. Dune Part 2, directed by Denis Villeneuve, is a science fiction spectacular and very exciting with it. The rendering of the sandworms is particularly impressive, so I'd have thought that this was probably a favourite for the VFX Oscar. Although with that being said, I also predicted that Hans Zimmer's score might win the Oscar, and that hasn't even been nominated in the long list of 20 film scores, which feels like an utter crime.
Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect.
And my number 6 slot is The Substance. There are some films that stick in the mind long after you've seen them, and The Substance is one of those. With yet another great female director in the form of Coralie Farjat, this satirical body horror shocked audiences in cinemas around the world. It sees a brilliant Demi Moore grasping for a solution to aging and getting a lot more than she bargains for through an horrific transformation into the young and sexy form of Margaret Qualley. The film also sports a massively creepy turn from Dennis Quaid. The film went hugely over the top for me in the finale in a Carrie-esque sort of way. Otherwise, it might have been higher up in my top 10.
As a child, my world was forever changed. My mother was magnificent. And he took it all from me.
Who do we have here?
She's from a place of abundance. This is our destiny.
My childhood, my mother, I want them back.
Into my top 5, and at number 5 I have Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Like Dune Part 2, this science fiction is pure big screen entertainment. The veteran George Miller is again in the chair, and this charts the origin story of Furiosa, the striking character played by Charlize Theron in Mad Max Fury Road. This time it's the wonderful Anya Taylor-Joy playing the younger version of the character, with a scenery-chewing Chris Hemsworth playing the big baddie Dementus. With characters like Scrotus and Rectus, and with Dementus swirling bomby knockers around, this was totally mental but enormously entertaining. Also watch out for a brief cameo by Max himself.
You remember Helen from the home, Joe? She was at school with us.
Been 20 odd years. It's funny. What is? This is the first time we've ever talked.
Snoopians against the law.
You like her? You've been hiding away too long.
What is going on with those two? Oh.
And my number 4 is Chuck Chuck Baby, a film which I dare say some of you have never heard of. This is a tiny British film, but is one that I fell in love with. Chuck Chuck Baby is written and directed by yet another female director, Janice Pugh, and it scrunches together the gritty reality of a Ken Loach social drama, some of the surrealist whimsy of La La Land, the toe-tapping karaoke nature of Sunshine on Leaf, the dark humour of The Full Monty, and it even leaves you with the uplifting, life-affirming joy of the finale of An Officer and a Gentleman. How's that for a movie cocktail? As a pair of women working in a chicken factory in North Wales, but romantically drawn together, it stars Louise Brealey and Annabelle Scioli, and is simply terrific. Brealey's Oscar reel moment comes early in the film as she sings along to Neil Diamond's I Am, I Said, a passionate cry to validate her self-worth while reducing herself to floods of genuine tears. I had the great joy of meeting Louise Brealey at the BFI earlier this year, but had yet to see this film, which is a great shame, otherwise I would have gushed much more.
Monk, your books are good, but they're not popular. Editors, they want a black book.
They have a black book. I'm black, and it's my book.
You know what I mean.
Look at what they publish. Look at what they expect us to write. I just want to rub their noses in it.
And my number 3 is American Fiction. It's always difficult to juggle these lists between films I've seen and loved early in the year versus those which have only just passed my eyes. This one was a darling of last year's Oscar nominations. It was written and directed by Cord Jefferson, and Jefferson won the Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar, and deservedly so. The script is simply brilliant, featuring the wonderful Jeffrey Wright as Monk, a serious writer told to make his books more black to gain popularity. It's full of charm and wit and is utterly delightful. The out there fourth wall breaking ending wasn't to everybody's liking, but I really enjoyed it. While American Fiction featured strongly in last year's Oscars, my number 2 film will, I'm sure, feature very strongly in this year's awards.
Although we sisters are supposed to be invisible, God has nevertheless given us eyes and ears.
What did you discuss with the Holy Father in that final meeting?
The arrangements were made in Paris.
I shall pretend this conversation never took place.
But it has taken place. This is a conclave, it's not a war.
It is a war, and you have to commit to a side.
And my number 2 slot is Conclave. This is only just leaving cinemas at the moment, but Conclave is virtually all set in a single location, the Vatican. The film follows the bureaucratic process of the election of a new pope. Now that doesn't sound very promising for a gripping thriller, does it? But Edward Berger, the director, really delivers with 2 hours of high tension and glorious acting from the 4 principal leads, Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow and Isabella Rossellini. It's a really strong field for the Oscars this year, but Ralph Fiennes must surely get a Best Actor Oscar nomination and might well go on to win it. If you haven't seen Conclave yet, make sure you do. It's almost movie perfection.
This your mum and dad?
Yeah. They died just before I was 12. I'm trying to write about them at the moment.
How's it going?
Strangely. Hi.
Hi.
And my number 1 for 2024 is All of Us Strangers. I declared at the time that this film would get a place on my greatest of all time list, so it should come as no surprise that this gets my number 1 slot for the year. It features pitch perfect performances from Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal as 2 lonely men in a gay relationship, but it also has elements of mystical time travel that just work so perfectly. Claire Foy and Jamie Bell co-star as Adam's long dead parents and play their 1980s attitudes just perfectly. A scene where Claire Foy is singing along to You Were Always on My Mind while decorating a Christmas tree ranks as my #1 standout scene from any film in 2024. Just immensely moving. All of Us Strangers is available to stream at the moment on Disney Plus. If you haven't seen it, do so. So that's a wrap for my 2024 at the movies, but watch out for a special episode of Flickering Dreams where my list will get mashed together with my free film reviewing compadres to create our combined top 20. A happy new year to you, and thanks for continuing to follow One Man's Movies. Your support and positive comments are always very much appreciated.